Hey, what is going on, guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video we're going to be breaking down the new strong and weak picks for patch 9.18. Alright, so to start things off here, taking a look at the champions getting stronger. First up is going to be Annie. Now, you could definitely argue whether or not she's getting stronger with these changes. Her E is getting a couple of different changes here, couple of buffs, couple of nerfs. So Annie is now going to gain 25 to 51% based on level bonus movement speed. That's going to depreciate quickly over 1.5 seconds. So this will mean now that Annie does have a little bit more of a way to look to engage herself, look to just press her E, run up to the opponent, use her ult stun on somebody. So it does help her ability to find picks in next patch a little bit better. The damage reduction though is going to be lowered on her E, and the cooldown is going to be increased. So it's a bit of a buff, bit of a nerf. I do think that this is going to help Annie out, definitely more so than it would hurt her. So I would say she gets a little bit stronger with this change, but I don't think she's going to jump up to S tier or anything. She will remain an A tier pick. Alright, so next up here for Aurelion Sol, his base HP is being increased from 510 up to 575. Now this is a little bit of a revert to a nerf that Aurelion Sol got back in patch 8.21 of last season. His base health got reduced from 562 down to 510, so they're bumping it back up now. It's even more than it was previous to when it did get nerfed. I'm not too sure if I really agree with this change here, because I feel like Aurelion Sol is actually a pretty good pick right now. A lot of players are playing him wrong right now in this patch because they're running phase rush. A lot of players are still going for the Rod of Ages build on him. So if people are actually playing him properly, I could see him having at least like a 50-51% win rate. And with this change here, and with the fact that more people will eventually start to play him properly, he could actually be an S tier pick in next patch, but at the very least he will be an A tier mid lane champion. So next up here for Kaitlyn. Kaitlyn's actually getting buffed next patch, and I feel like this change is pretty much just targeted towards the competitive scene. I don't think Kaitlyn for solo queue needs a buff at all right now. In my opinion, she is an S tier AD carry, so a lot of the buffs in this patch, like the Kaitlyn changes, the Jhin, the Lee Sin, I feel like they're fine in solo queue, but they're getting buffed because they're not seeing a ton of play in competitive. So for Kaitlyn here, base AD from 60 up to 62. Her laning phase does get stronger here in 9.18, and with a couple of other AD carries getting nerfed as well, which we'll talk about in a moment here in Kaisa and in Ziya, Kaitlyn could potentially now be one of the strongest, if not the strongest AD carries in 9.18. So we got some more buffs for Ekko. He got buffed, I think it was 2 patches ago now. He's getting a couple more buffs here in 9.18. So it looks like they're just slowly buffing up Ekko, and they're trying to put him into a decent spot to where he is picked more in the pro scene, and to where he could be a decent counter pick in certain situations. So he is getting a W change to where the mana cost is being lowered there. Pretty nice, because it now means that you will actually be able to use this ability in the laning phase a little bit more without having to worry about going out of mana, because a lot of the time if you're using your W with Ekko in lane, if you're looking to trade, you're just going to run out of mana super quickly. So I do like that change there. And then the stun duration being increased by 0.5 seconds, that's actually going to be pretty big, because in the mid to late game, 2.25 second stun there from Ekko W, if you can get that on multiple targets, then that could now single-handedly win you a team fight or just win you the game. So I think that for good Ekko players, for experienced Ekko players, this change is really going to impact them quite a bit for next patch. I think for the average Ekko player though, the change doesn't mean too much, so I do still expect him to remain an A tier pick. So we got buffs to Evelyn. This is another change here that I think is kind of unnecessary. Evelyn is like a solid A tier pick right now in 9.17. So with this change here, I do think it could potentially bump her back up into S tier. So the changes she's getting, or the change she's getting, is to her ultimate. Damage multiplier versus low health targets is being increased from 100% up to 140%. So this basically means that Evelyn's ability to one-shot you for next patch is going to be getting stronger, and that's something that I feel like a lot of people would definitely disagree with, and a lot of people probably aren't going to like this change here for 9.18, but expect Evelyn to become quite a bit stronger here, and expect her to be one of the top tier junglers. Now for Jhin, pretty much the exact same change as to Kaitlyn, so base AD being increased by 2 will help his laning phase out a little bit for next patch, and I think that Jhin and Kaitlyn could potentially be 2 of the strongest ADs now. I think that playing these strong laning AD carries, or these AD carries that do have the potential to follow up really well with CC supports being played down in the bot lane right now. You're seeing a lot of Leona, Zyra, Thresh, Pyke, just these very aggro lanes that Jhin and Kaitlyn can do very well into. I just think because of that, and also because of these buffs, these two AD carries are going to be ones to watch out for in next patch, and I would definitely recommend picking up either one of them. And then for Lee Sin, pretty small changes to his base stats, but base HP being increased there by 4.2, base damage being increased by 0.82, and then his ultimate is getting buffed. Damage is being increased by 25 at all ranks, so he's actually getting a buff there in his rank 1 ultimate, so that is pretty big. I do think that Lee Sin is a pretty decent jungler in this patch right now. Of course, he's always going to be a jungler that is going to depend on the player who's playing him as to how strong he can be, so if you're an average Lee Sin, if you haven't played him a ton, probably not a pick I'd recommend playing in solo queue, but I think that if you're a good Lee Sin player, he's going to be a great pick in 9.18. He could potentially jump up into S tier for the higher elos, but I think that for the majority of elos, he will remain an A tier pick. Now for Miss Fortune, she is getting a pretty nice change to her E for next patch. The slow is being changed the most at rank 1 in it, so it's going from 28% up to 40% at rank 1. This is pretty big because this is the ability you max out last on Miss Fortune, so the fact that it did get buffed at rank 1 is really nice for her. I don't think these are going to be enough to jump her up into S tier, but they quite possibly could. I think that for the lower elo, she could definitely be an S tier pick in next patch because we are seeing Ziya getting nerfed, we are seeing Kaisa getting nerfed, so that's pretty good for Miss Fortune. And then with this buff here, so with a direct change and with some indirect changes, Miss Fortune, she's definitely going to be one of the stronger AD carries here in 9.18. Alright, so taking a look at the champions getting weaker for next patch. First up here is Aatrox. So his passive is getting a change to where the heal is being changed from 100% of damage dealt to minions to 25% of damage dealt to minions. So pretty big hit here to Aatrox's sustain in the laning phase and just his sustain throughout the game. So I do think that this is going to bump him down a little bit. Potentially it could bump him down into B tier, but I don't see that happening. I still think he's going to be a decent top lane pick, but at the very most, he is going to be an A tier top laner for 9.18. Now for Akali, she is probably getting hit the hardest in this patch, or she's getting the most impactful changes out of any champion in 9.18. So her ultimate, the R2 minimum damage, is being lowered there by 20 at rank 1. Gonna be the same once you do get it maxed out, but a pretty big hit there to her early game all-in potential. Cooldown on her ultimate has also been increased by 40 seconds at rank 1, so really taking away from Akali's power there at level 6. The micro stun is also gonna be removed from her ultimate, so these are pretty impactful changes in my opinion, and I do think that right now in this patch for solo queue, Akali is a pretty decent pick. I'd say she's an A tier pick right now, but with these changes, I do think she is going to drop down into B or C tier depending on your elo. Higher elos, I still think she's going to be a pretty decent pick, so she would remain a B tier pick, but I think that for the lower elos, she is going to drop down into C tier. Now for Kaisa, she is getting a pretty big hit here to her mid to late game. The bonus attack speed on her E is being lowered from 80% once you get it maxed out down to 60%. It's not being changed in the early game at all, which I guess is nice because Kaisa's early game is already pretty weak, but they are hitting her mid to late game, which is one of her stronger points to her kit at the moment. So with this change here, with other AD carries getting buffed as well, I do predict that Kaisa is going to drop from S tier down into A tier. Now for Nunu, at first glance, it does look like he's got a bunch of different changes here for next patch, a bunch of different nerfs, but when you really take a look at them, they're pretty small for the most part. So HP per level being lowered there by 8, mana being lowered by 3, mana per 5 being lowered by 0.44, armor per level being lowered by 0.5, so pretty small changes overall. The E change here, I guess, is probably the bigger one. Slow is being changed from 50% at all ranks down to 30% at rank 1 there, so it does hurt his early game ganking potential a little bit for next patch, but considering Nunu's sitting at like a 56% win rate right now in 9.18, these changes are definitely not going to be enough to drop him out of S tier, so expect Nunu to still be one of the strongest junglers for this coming patch. And then lastly, to round out the video, for Ziya, her base armor is being lowered from 28 down to 25, so a decent hit there to her early game ultimate is being changed where the cooldown is being increased by 20 seconds at all ranks. So pretty big hit here to her survivability in the mid to late game, bit of a hit to her all-in potential in the laning phase. So I do think that with this change here, she is going to drop out of S tier down into A tier, and the AD carry meta is definitely going to be interesting here in 9.18. A lot of different AD carry changes in this patch, so I do expect champions like Kaitlyn, Jhin, Miss Fortune to definitely bump up for next patch. Ziya and Kaisa will be dropping down, so it's gonna be nice to see a bit of a shift in the AD carry meta. I think it has been pretty stale the past couple of patches here, so definitely gonna be nice to see a bit of a change down in the bot lane. So that is going to round out the video though, guys. Those are the new strong and weak picks heading into patch 9.18. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, and hopefully it does give you a head start on what you should be looking to prioritize here and what you should be looking to drop in 9.18. So with that being said, if you guys did enjoy the video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching. Have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.